don't look too happy today. There's a reason. I'm really bummed out. I'm sitting here looking at a puddle of fluid on the floor here. And upon closer inspection, I notice that it's red. Yes, that's right, a transmission leak. I've been chasing this transmission leak on my 300 SDL here for about 2 weeks and have finally narrowed it down, the last leak, to the front seal. Let me explain what I've already done, and then we're going to talk about what I'm going to have to do to fix the prominent leak that you see here. When I first purchased this car a couple months ago, I knew there was a transmission fluid leak. I could tell by looking down both sides of the belly pan. They were very wet, and the wetness indicated transmission fluid, not engine oil. I was hoping the leak wouldn't be a real big problem, so I went ahead and removed the belly pan here, and there was so much oil fluid around the transmission area that I could not tell initially where the leak was coming from. So to kind of narrow it down, I started by removing the pan. Sure enough, I found out that the pan was bent and the gasket was cut, and I went ahead and straightened out the pan lip and installed a new gasket and filter. Then drove the car, and sure enough, a leak persisted. At that point, I went ahead and went after the second most common leak on these things, and that's from the transmission fill tube located on the front right side of the transmission. That required removing the tube and installing a new O-ring. And even after doing that, the transmission leak persisted. And upon further inspection, after cleaning everything, I could see that the primary leak was coming out of the bell housing. That's when I got really bummed out, because that means the transmission is going to have to be removed. When chasing transmission fluid leaks, there's a couple things you have to keep in mind. Number one, don't ever assume that where you see the fluid, that is where the leak is. When I first pulled the body pan or the belly pan off of this car, it was dripping off the rear of the transmission. And I could have assumed that, oh man, it's leaking out the rear seal. It required a systematic effort to clean the entire area and run the engine and drive the car a couple times to narrow that leak down. So don't start after a leak until you're sure where it's coming from. Many of the leaks come right out of the pan seal. This is because people over-tighten the pan bolts. I have a kit available on my website which includes a new pan gasket and filter along with complete instructions on how to install it and torque it properly. Also, I've just come out with a new kit to replace that O-ring on the fill tube. This is becoming a very common problem as these O-rings age and harden over time. And finally, it looks like I'm going to have to do another instruction. You know, they say there's opportunity in every problem, and sure enough, this transmission is going to have to come out and go on the bench, and I'm going to have to replace the front seals. So, stay tuned for my next video on transmission seal replacement.